Chapter 11. The White Mountain. Otak and Maroo sat with Old Mother on the sleeping bench listening as she told them how to find the trail across the White Mountain, scratching symbols in the ice and making them memorize the route, step by step. She warned them again and again to be careful on the glacier, to make offerings to the mountain spirits before they attempted to cross it, to feel ahead with a staff before putting a foot down. Above all, to go slowly. The plateau at the top of the glacier, she said, would be colder than anything they had ever known. They might need to build a snow house to survive the night. After that, a day's walk should bring them to the Pass of the Spirits. There was a great cave above the pass. You will be afraid when you reach the cave, Old Mother said, and Maroo felt a prickle of fear at her back already, as if the mountain had reached out to her. Don't linger there. Beyond the cave, you will be on the eastern slope of the mountain, and when you look down, you'll see the crossing plain. Can we take Revo? Otak asked. All this time, Revo had been lying asleep between the two children, his muzzle on Maroo's knee. No one had thought about him until now. Old Mother considered. Yes, she said at last, you must take him. The children smiled at each other. If he stays here, he will eat precious food, but if you take him, he can hunt for himself. And if you find yourself starving, you must kill him and eat him. Maroo and Otak exclaimed together, No! But Old Mother said sternly, You must be prepared for this. If you need to kill the dog to survive, you must kill him. It will be better to kill him than to take risks hunting larger animals. Otak nodded. He knew this caution was meant for him. And now, said Old Mother, the most important thing of all, Otak. Maroo is your leader. You must obey her. Otak looked sulkily. I have chosen Maroo as leader because she is the elder, and also because I can trust her to be sensible and cautious, Old Mother said. The mountain is dangerous. You must cross it softly and quickly, like the hair on new snow, before it feels that you are there. Maroo was apprehensive, not only at the prospect of leading the journey, but also at the thought of controlling Otak. Would he obey her? He could be so silly. She began almost to wish that they were not going alone. Later, Old Mother told them all a story, the one that explained how the moon and stars were made, and Maroo forgot her worries for a while. You must remember the songs and stories, Old Mother said afterward. Stories give you hope, even when the worst comes. A man might have a sharp spear and a full belly, but if he has lost hope, he will die. Now let us divide the meat. They still had most of the meat they had cut from the deer. Old Mother gave only a little to Maroo and Otak to carry with them, and kept the rest for the family, who would be waiting in the snow house. Tikek and Vorka both protested. They wanted to give the children more of the meat, but Old Mother said no. We must stay here, and this meat must last us many days. The children can hunt and forage. You and the baby and little Nimei must survive. It was a hard decision, but they all knew that in their hearts that it was right. When Otak and Maroo had put away their share of the meat in the skin bag, Old Mother looked at what remained and held up her wrinkled hands. If they ate just enough to keep them from starving, she said, there was enough meat left to last them as many days as the fingers on both hands. That should give time for Maroo and Otak to reach the autumn camp and send rescuers to the snow house. But if anything, weather or accident, delay the children, the family might starve before help arrived. Her grandmother did not speak of it, but Maroo knew that if the meat was running low and no help was in sight, Old Mother would leave the snow house and walk away across the plain until she died of cold or was killed by hungry animals, leaving one less mouth to feed. And that decision, too, would be right. But Maroo did not want to think about it. Otak carried, besides the bundle of furs on his back, his spear, staff, bolas, sling, and knives of different kinds. Maroo carried her staff and knives, and also part of the fire from the snow house, smoldering inside a horn slung from her belt. Old Mother had captured the fire and had spoken spells over it that would keep the children safe. Maroo carried her own fire-making tools, but she was glad to be given part of Old Mother's fire. She knew it would be a good magic to have with her. It was time to part. Old Mother made a drink of hot, herb-flavored water, and they passed it around from one to another. They hugged each other and spoke confidently of meeting soon when Otaka and Maroo brought help. But Maroo could see that the adults did not feel as confident as they sounded. She was glad at last to be trudging away from the snow house with Otaka and the dog and looking back to wave, because the unspoken fears of the adults made her feel uneasy. Each time they looked back, the snow house seemed smaller. At last it was invisible, blended with the snowy plain, and only the tiny waving dots beside it marked where it was. Even so, Maroo and Otak were afraid of being unable to find it again. They were accustomed to noticing every landmark, even on a plain empty except for rocks and stones and a few stunted shrubs. More snow might cover up their own tracks, but they would still be able to lead the rescuers to the tiny snow house. They walked fast all day, happy and excited. Revel scampered around them, and they threw a bone for him to chase and bring back. The white mountain grew steadily nearer, and it was good to be able to walk swiftly toward it without the crying of Nimue and the slow pace of the women. Tekek had said that the White Mountain was a day's journey away, but despite their late start, the children reached its lower slopes long before nightfall and decided to climb up to a small plateau they could see above them, near the foot of the huge glacier. Old Mother had described it to them as a good place to make camp. The ascent was easy enough at first. The path they were to follow led up beside a little stony stream that came clattering down from the edge of the melting ice. They had no choice but to stay close to the stream, for on either side was a thick, tangled growth of stunted willows and creepers difficult to walk through. There were many small streams crisscrossing the rough ground, joining together and growing bigger as they ran down the mountainside. Some were so small that they could be stepped over. For the others, Maroo would look for an easy crossing place, with large flat stones in the water. Sometimes they slipped. Then, even through their boots, the water sent an icy shock to the stomach. As they rose higher above the plain, the streams became smaller and more numerous, and there was a sharp, new cold in the air. The ascent grew steeper all the time, and they tired quickly. The sun had begun to dip, and Maroo was feeling that she could walk no farther when they reached the plateau. They threw themselves down on the ground and leaned on their packs. Maroo scooped up water in a hollow horn, and they drank from it in turn. Maroo looked down at the plain far below. The low sun had turned it into a place of shadowy hollows and sparkling mounds. Every clump of willow or birch stood out crisply and threw a long dark shadow. In the distance, on the far side of the river, a brown line was moving. Deer. Or was it bison? Deer. A pair of proud antlers had shone briefly across the sky. Far beyond the deer, a great lake flashed fire at the sun. Maroo tried to find the snow house. She followed with her eyes the trail she and Otak had made, back and back across the plain, but it became impossible to see, and she had to look for landmarks, clumps of trees, or rocks. She found the spot where she thought the snow house must be, but she could not see it. Then, just as she was about to give up and ease her aching eyes, she saw what she was looking for, a tiny column of smoke rising from behind a clump of dwarf birch. It looked indescribably far away, and as she pointed it out to her brother, she felt, for the first time that day, lonely and a little afraid. She looked behind her. Above their camp soared the glacier they must cross tomorrow. Half of it was blinding bright, the other half blue in the shadow of a peak. It was wide and trackless, yet Maroo could see that there was only one way to go, up to a pass on the horizon, between two sharp peaks. But now they had to make camp for the night. Otak gathered twigs for firewood, and Maroo blew Old Mother's fire gently back to life. They made a ring of stones and sheltered the fire with their bodies until it was red and crackling. Maroo watched it lovingly. It was her first hearthplace. Old Mother had said there was an overhanging rock at the back of the plateau where they could shelter at night. Maroo found it and began to arrange the furs inside. They both went into their shelter and shared some of the meat, while the sun was swallowed by the approaching night and the plain below grew dark. Now the smoke from the snow house was gone, and they were quite alone. Maroo sensed the spirit of the mountain all around them. What were spirits? Why was the mountain hostile to people? The unanswerable questions made her more afraid. "Let's go to sleep," she whispered. Otak nodded. She saw that he too was afraid, but trying not to show it. They crawled under the rock and huddled close together for warmth. Revel blocked the entrance with his body. The night wind woke, and they heard spirit voices in it. Neither could sleep. They lay awake, whispering. Yet for all their fear of the night, they were not afraid of the journey ahead, and never doubted that they would survive it. To banish the night fears, they talked of the autumn hunting on the banks of the great river, and of the friends they would meet there. There would be dancing and feasting if the hunting was good, which it could hardly fail to be with the deer passing in an endless stream along the trail so that a man could scarcely miss. Otak, filled with the importance of their mission, whispered, "I shall be a hunter soon. Maybe next winter, or the one after." Maroo laughed. "You're far too young. You'll have to wait several winters till you are as old as I am, or more. Even I would be too young." It was Otak's turn to be superior. "You? You would never be a hunter. You will never see the deep caves." He had touched on a subject that Maroo had always been curious about. She dropped her quarrelsome tone and whispered, "What do you have to do to become a hunter? You know it's all secret, but you must have heard something." Otak's voice next to her ear said softly, "It's to do with the bulls and horses and the secret pictures in the deep caves." "Do you have to kill a bull?" "I don't think so. It's something even more frightening than that." "How could anything be more frightening than that?" "I don't know, but that's what they say." They stopped whispering, but Maroo could tell from Otak's breathing that he was still awake, probably thinking about the ordeal of becoming a hunter. That part of the winter caves, the deep, mysterious hunters' sanctuaries, was unknown to her and always would be. Her life lay in the outer caves around the hearthplace, the rituals of birth and death, the mysteries she would be admitted to, and from which Otak would be excluded, and the dances. Maroo squirmed down further into her furs and thought about the dances, some like the sun dance, or danced by the whole tribe, even the toddlers, and some were hunters' dances. But many belonged solely to the women and girls. She began thinking herself through the intricate movements of the grass dance. Somewhere, far down on the dark plain, a long, rising howl broke the stillness of the night. A wolf, Maroo thought. Revel woke and whined softly. Maroo patted his head. His rough fur comforted her. The night was cruel, but she knew they would be safe in the shelter till morning.